Hello, everyone. My name is Shannon Roebuck. I'm Executive Director at Bridging Impact, and I would just like to say that I hope everyone is safe in light of Hurricane Ian, and thank you all for all of the work you're doing to help the animals impacted, especially on top of the other great work you're already doing. And Charlotte is my co-host, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Charlotte Otero. I'm the community strategist at Maddie's Fun, so I'll be co-hosting today with Shannon. Nice to have you all here.
And we'll start with our question of the day. And the question is, what's something on your desk, a nearby wall, or out the window that cheers you up during the day? And for me, I love trees. So right now I'm really enjoying watching this maple tree start changing colors and seem to have some more beautiful leaves every morning. So it's something that's bringing me joy right now. If you could share your responses in the chat, we'll read them out. How about you, Charlotte?
Yeah, for me, pretty similar. I get to look out this big window. I've got a lot of birds out the window. I love watching the bird bath. So there's a cute little family of quail outside right now drinking from the bath. So it's
Oh,
adorable.
nice.
Kim,
So
same, watching bird baths out there. I see you watching dogs play outside their window.
a picture of a dad. That's great. Favorite person in the world.
A cat on the desk. Yes, yes, that happens a lot. We'll hope
Yep.
we get to see a few cat cameos.
Halloween decor and lights. Dogs playing right outside my desk window. Hockey card. That's great. Sorry, now you can hear my dog who's usually sitting at my feet. So I will pass it over to you, Charlotte, for our next section.
Awesome. Yeah, everyone feel free, keep dropping your responses in the chat. Again, if you're just joining us, our question of the day is what's something on your desk, a nearby wall, or out the window that cheers you up during the day? So we'll kick off this call doing one of the best things. I'm going to toss it over to my colleague, Kelly Clardy, who is our grants manager at Maddie's Fund, and she'll be announcing our September grant winners. So Kelly, over to you.
Hey everyone, thanks so much, Charlotte. Well, to answer the question of the day, my office, my window overlooks what used to be a golf course, and now it's just kind of an overrun park, natural area, but there are lots of dogs, and every now and then, like a cat will run through, and it's so fun, so much fun to watch. So, also so much fun is our monthly giveaway. And I am very excited to present our winners today. So let me share my screen. And start the slideshow. So, as you know, we do a drawing to see how much we're giving away, how many grants and the amount, and then the drawing for the actual winners. So this month we've got 2 winners of $5,000 each. And I'm so excited because Elise Blue is one of our winners. And Annette Montminy, if I'm pronouncing that right, is our second winner. And y'all, I want to see if Elise and Annette are here, but I have exciting things to say about each of them because Annette won because she watched on demand. So don't forget that if you miss watching this live, you can watch on demand and then enter to win. So don't forget about that. And then Elise, I don't know if you're here, but if Elise's name looks familiar to y'all, it's because she has won before. And you can win multiple times. So we're very, very excited that she entered as well. So Elise and Annette, are y'all here? All right, I'm gonna guess not. But congratulations to both of you. Our grants team will reach out to you, and y'all don't forget to enter. I think Irene just dropped the link in the chat. Be sure to enter our drawing so that you can win.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelly. And of course, thanks to Maddie. Again, be sure to enter for this next month. And again, like we said, it'll kind of be random each time. It may be 5,000, maybe 2 winners, it may be 5. So keep entering, because every single time you attend or watch on demand, it gives you another entry. So now we will move on to our national updates. So we'll open the floor now. If you have an update you'd like to share with the group, now's your chance. Please just keep it under to 1 minute so that we can get everyone in, and feel free to also drop it in the chat. So open it up for national updates.
I can start. This is Sheila, Director of Research for Maddie's Fund, and our next Maddie's Insight webcast, where we share findings from research scientists, and they also talk about practical applications of that research for us, is going to be this Thursday at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern Time. Really excited to announce we'll be hearing from Dr. Frank McMillan, who's going to be talking about social pain in dogs, and hope to see some of you there.
Hey, it's Aurora from Cuddly. Just wanted to remind everyone that we are sponsoring partners for the Return to Home Challenge, which just kicked off. And so for challenge participants who are also Cuddly partners, we're giving away 2 $2,500 in-kind donations of, all the things off of the wish list, whatever you need. So if you are a challenge participant, but not yet a Cuddly partner, I will drop our email in the chat. You can reach out, and we'd love to get you set up and get you some stuff.
Hi, I'm Michelle Nichols from the Seattle area, and I'm here from the Animal Hospice Group. We offer education and support to people like you, professionals and caregivers, who are caring for animals in need at a terminal illness, aging, and at the end of life. So our certification program is available for you to check out. I'm putting it into the chat, and I welcome you to take a look at it. Please sign up for our mailing list, and you'll get a series of emails that will tell you more. Just coming directly to your inbox. So thanks everyone, and hope to see you in our community.
Stacy here with the Community Cats podcast. We had a great session with the TNR certification workshop this past Saturday. We are looking for organizations to partner with that would like to participate in helping encourage their volunteers to take the TNR certification workshop. And I'm happy to discuss that with anybody. Our next session is November 5th. Thanks to Maddie, we have some scholarships available for Diversity Day, our online Diversity Day, which will be happening on October 16th. We have online fundraising day, and we on October 15th, TNR is trap, neuter, and return. And feel free to ask questions. So thanks, Alexis. You're right on top of things there. You win the cat trivia. Many people know I'm a big fan of cat trivia. We always do cat trivia, so that's fun. But just to let you know, if you are interested in a scholarship to Diversity Day, thanks to Maddie, just throw your email in the chat or message me, and I will get you the link to the scholarship form. Thanks so much, everybody.
All right, if we don't have any more updates, we can move on to our fabulous presentation. And today's presentation is Listening to Hear, Removing Hidden Barriers and Offering Grace. And it is presented by Jennifer Toussaint. She is the Chief Animal Control Officer at Animal Welfare League of Arlington.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm going to share my screen just so we can get rolling today. Hi, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Thank you so much for joining me this morning/afternoon, depending upon where you're joining me from. I saw a lot of East Coasters on the drop-down chat. I am joining you from Arlington, Virginia. I'm the Chief of Animal Control at the Animal Welfare League of Arlington. I've served in this position for over 10 years here in Arlington County. And this morning/afternoon, we're going to talk about listening to hear, removing hidden barriers, and offering grace. I wanted to start with a land and labor acknowledgement. This is the one, of course, for my community, but I welcome you to jot down into the chat and acknowledge the peoples, especially the indigenous peoples, in which land you currently occupy. Here in Arlington County, it was the former homeland of the Nacotchtank people that later became part of Piscataway Nation. Additionally, here in Arlington, we of course acknowledge that the prosperity of what we now know to be Arlington, including the DC metro area, was built in large measure on the stolen labor of people of African descent, including some 5 dozen who labored at Arlington House, which was the county's symbol for many decades. We do this in order to move forward and repair past harms. Thank you. So getting in the right mind frame for the presentation today, space and grace, you're going to hear me say it often. I really believe in this foundation. I think a lot of us know how to do this. You know, in the animal welfare world, a dog running at large or coming into our care, being transferred and coming off a transport vehicle, we know to give that animal some time and some grace in order to settle in and become accustomed to working with us. We work on building rapport in a relationship, and we do that through non-acoustic means, right? Using food and giving time and offering quiet. And so a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today is just taking the same thing many of us do when we're interacting with the animals in our facilities and doing the same with the people, the community members who come in for care and services, or if you're joining me from animal control or field services, the community members whose homes you're going out to engage with. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about crisis. I'm a CIT trained officer. I'm a crisis interventionist. We like to use the word crisis instead of conflict because crisis is defined as any time of intense difficulty, trouble, or upset. And conflict is a disagreement or argument, right? So conflict already has us in an adversarial place. It's a me versus them. Whereas when we're working through these crises that arise in the animal welfare world, of which many of us could give examples, we want to be solutionary and we want to be a part of the overall positive outcome. And so we're not going to look at these situations in an adversarial way. So what's the whole point of active listening? It's to establish rapport and understanding, gather information, and then later be able to encourage behavior change through mutual respect. So I like to think of this kind of as walking up a stairway, right? So we have an individual who comes into contact with us. They could be coming to your front desk. They could be calling over the phone to your rescue organization, or again, you're responding out into the field and you're on their front steps, right? Knocking on their door. How do we garner enough rapport with that individual to be able to walk up this stairway and overall have a behavioral change? We're all on the same page and wanting to go in a positive direction. But how do we get there? And I like to think of it as a measured approach. So if you know Parks and Rec, I love this quote because it says, these people are members of my community that care about where they live. So what I hear when I'm being yelled at is people caring loudly at me, right? We're not going to internalize or take personal the response or feelings expressed by others, especially in these situations of crisis. People have come to us and it takes a lot to answer or to pick up the phone, to find your phone number and to give your organization a call, to come down in person, right? They might have taken multiple modes of transportation just to get to your front door. So we are certainly going to keep those arms open when these people come in and be open to the idea that they're expressing, you know, fear, anxiety, stress, frustration, leaning back on those fear-free modules that so many of us know. People are expressing the same things, and it comes from a basis of sadness or misunderstanding. So how do you get started in this? Really important to garner a person's name politely and introduce yourself. I know this sounds pretty basic, but I've actually watched animal welfare professionals for over a decade now. We commonly might ask somebody their name, but we don't tell them what ours are. Also, please do not assume a relationship or use nicknames or shortened names with an individual. We need to be very culturally sensitive while having these interactions with people. Using somebody's shortened name is a level of rapport that you haven't earned yet. So if I introduce myself as Jennifer, I expect to be.
I don't know how to minimize this. You're full screen.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting some background noise. So if I introduce myself as Jennifer, we're going to use Jennifer. Assess the environment to remove any distractions, right? We're always going to make sure that we're safe. Similarly, if a community member was to run in your front door and they're holding their pet and their pet is obviously bleeding, right, we're going to call for backup because I'm going to stay focused on the person and getting basic foundational understanding of what's going on. But I need somebody else to come into the scene, right, to assess that pet and move forward. We're going to adjust our tone and our stance. When we go back to space and grace, right, when we're interacting with an animal and an animal seems upset, we back up. We're going to do the same thing with people. It seems pretty straightforward, but it can really mean the most in these interactions. And a basis foundation of understanding that you will never understand, right? We don't know the trauma of those around us. We will never know the backstory of the people we're interacting with. And we're going to give some scenarios towards the end to talk about how this has shown up for me and the life lessons that I've learned from my community. Verbal versus nonverbal communication. Make sure that obviously we're being culturally responsive to these types of things. Space is always appreciated in all cultures, in all relationships. Giving somebody space and offering some grace is always going to give the other person a feeling of feeling welcomed and safe. Making sure that we're making that our body is matching the intentionality of our language is really important when having these interactions. So if I say that I really care, but I'm looking down and I'm kicking at the grass while you're talking, I'm not giving the physical responsiveness of I care and I'm focused on you right now. So some of the barriers, right? Criticizing and judging, and we'll talk about how that can sometimes show up, especially in our social media language. Engaging in a debate, right? I'm out here to talk to you about your dog. Well, you can't talk to me about my dog. Well, I'm going to talk to you about your dog. That back and forthness, you've created a conflict, right? Now we're in an adversarial position. We've moved past crisis. We've created an instigating situation. Threatening language. I really, especially in animal welfare, we do not threaten to take people's pets. That is inappropriate language, even if that is potentially where situations could go. Threatening language is not rapport building. It doesn't suddenly make that person trust you more or want to do or help remedy the situation that you're bringing to their attention. Minimizing their feelings. Well, I'm sure you felt upset, but you say it in a way that says, I really don't care that you're feeling upset. Not listening, right? We talked to the little kids about this when their hands are raised in classrooms, that they're not listening anymore because they're already formulating their response before they've heard what the other person's trying to say. Once you're formulating your response in your head, you're not listening to the other person anymore. Allowing distractions in the environment. One of my biggest pet peeves is checking your phones. For those of you who have smart watches, please make sure you're being mindful about when you glance down at it. I understand they buzz all of the time. My husband actually got one, and then I was like, well, I'm being rude now. And so I don't wear it because it's actually a really common habit, right? To look down and glance down when something on your wrist buzzes. But you're taking your attention away from the situation at hand, and you're telling that other person that they're not worth your time. They don't know what message has come in on your watch. They just know that you're not paying attention to them anymore. Self-orienting, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and explicit or implicit bias. I'm going to ask one of the individuals moderating to drop down that Project Implicit link that I provided. I don't have enough time, obviously, today to really go through explicit and implicit bias, but Project Implicit is a wonderful nonprofit organization where you can start to assess the potential implicit biases that you or individuals in your organization might have, right? Implicit bias are bias that we're unconscious of. And so they can be some of the hardest to get to the root cause of, right? Because you're not conscious in those decisions. And explicit bias in animal welfare, as an example, would be having a age restriction on adoption of animals under 6 months. So if a community member is over 65 years old, they're not allowed to adopt puppies and kittens. You're being explicitly biased and ageist. An implicit bias in animal welfare would be something similar to having a preference internally of renters versus individuals who own their homes, right? And so when you as a person are assessing those adoption applications, you're giving preferential treatment to owners of residences versus renters or people living in apartments. But again, this can show up in many different ways, and I welcome you to kind of look into that yourself. So your tone of voice, what we are saying does not really matter as much as how we are saying it. Tone of voice and demeanor is so important in animal welfare. So you walk into my front lobby and I say, hey, how are you? Thanks for coming. Or I say, hi, how are you? Thanks for coming down. The two different ways in which I said that brief tone of voice change can mean the most in building these relationships or making people actually feel welcome. Communication is 38% of how I talk, 55% how I look, right? That nonverbal communication, that offering space, that giving grace to the situation, and 7% of the words that I use. We're going to be very mindful of the tone, and we're going to talk about how that plays out. Emotional labeling. So you're dealing with an individual in crisis. Maybe they're on the phone. Maybe there's somebody that is directly in front of you. They've come down. They're very, very upset about something. We are going to emotionally label to make sure we're getting an understanding of what this person is trying to express. So what you might hear is anger, but what the person's actually trying to express is upset. The importance is that if you incorrectly emotionally label, it's okay. They're going to tell you you're wrong. They might yell it back at you and you say, I understand. I understand that I misrepresented that. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. So what I'm hearing is that you're upset about this situation, or you seem hurt today by these actions that were presented to you. It's important to emotionally label to make sure that we're on the same page with that person and we're being mindful of how they're trying to express their feelings. Again, you sound angry. If you use that phrase, you sound angry. They're going to yell back at you that they're not angry. But again, you're giving them the openness. You're opening the door for them to say, this is really how I'm feeling. You're labeling my emotion incorrectly. I'm not angry, I'm upset. Or I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. Paraphrasing briefly in your own words. Remember, we're not owning these conversations. You should be talking like 1/8 of the time in these interactions with people. In your own words, say what the individual is trying to express or understanding. So what I'm hearing today is that you came down here to get access for services, but you don't feel like we have the services to meet your needs, right? I've paraphrased what's likely been a 5-minute conversation that they've been talking about, the varied services that they felt they needed for their pet. And I paraphrased it and related it back to them so that they can say, yes, that's exactly what I feel. Okay, well, we're going up those stairs, right? I now have an understanding of why you are so upset today. We're going to reflect and mirror. Remember, we're going to do this intentionally to build rapport. I'm really upset that you came down here today. My neighbors called you out here to check on my dogs. My dogs are absolutely fine. They know it. You being here really makes me angry. I don't like people getting in my business. So it makes you angry when individuals come down to ask questions about the pets. You're going to mirror reflect sometimes because you're going to bring your tone down when they do it. So if they're yelling, I'm going to come down here when I'm responding, right? Because it's actually human nature to respond. If I drop my voice, you're going to naturally drop yours. You're not going to intentionally do it, but making sure that we're not volleying back and forth with that person. We don't go up in inflection. We always keep coming down. Asking open-ended questions. Recently this happened. Young puppy presents with gastrointestinal distress, has no known vaccination history. Really easy for me to jump to concerns such as parvo. But in asking open-ended questions, was there any changes to the pet's diet? Was there anything the pet got into in the home? All these things. The pet owner was able to tell me that they had actually bought some houseplants. And so here we were going down the diagnoses of, is this parvo? How is this presenting? When really this was gastrointestinal distress due to eating Dieffenbachia, which is a very fancy houseplant that became really popular during COVID and is extremely poisonous to our pets. Ask open-ended questions. Don't jump to assumptions. When you do this for a very long time, this is very difficult because we've seen it, right? We hear all the animal welfare professionals. I've seen it all. We haven't seen it all. I've never seen it all. I had a case earlier today, first of my kind. You just really never know what's going on. So being open-minded to the fact that you don't know. Convey sincere interest while you gain understanding. It gives an openness to responsive feedback without you over-directing the situation. Minimal encouragers. Please use them, especially if you're over the phone, but not more than 2. So if you give a okay, if you do more than 2 of those, you're not listening anymore. So they can be helpful, but please don't overuse them. Always combine them with other skills. And now we get to empathy, right? We've gotten a basic understanding of what the person might be going through. And now we're walking up those stairs. And if you could drop down into the chat, the links for It's Not About the Nail and Brene Brown on empathy. There's 2 very short YouTube videos that I would recommend you please take a consideration after today's training. They're literally like 2 minutes each. I just couldn't spare the time today during the presentation. They're very, very intentional in that what empathy is and is not, and what listening is and is not. So listening is not solutionary. We're listening to garner understanding, not solve someone's problem. And empathy is truly perspective taking with the person. We're not being sympathetic in that we're trying to stand outside of the problem and look in. We're going to stay in that moment and keep listening to that person. And we're not going to try and sugarcoat it, right? You know, somebody comes to you and their pet's passed away and they say, you know, I have the other dog at home. Well, at least you have a second dog. That's not empathetic, right? We're trying to sugarcoat it to get out of the discomfort that we're feeling in relation to that person. But we really need to non-self-orient in that situation. We need to stay in it with that person and let them own the moment. So now we've garnered rapport, right? We've taken those steps up there. We've been empathetic and honest. We've come at the situation with authenticity and active listening to try and understand what's going on. And now we have mutual trust. And this is where things change for people and pets. If you can go up this stairway with people, you'll be able to have a lasting impression with that person and make meaningful change for the animals that they live with. Do make sure that you're keeping promises that you make, right? When we've established rapport, sometimes now we're getting to making promises. We're getting to talking about solutions potential or offering services. You need to follow through on these things. It happens time and time again, right? Some of the biggest digs on animal welfare organizations is, I emailed, you never emailed me back. I called, I never got a call back. I talked to an officer, she was super kind, but she never came back out here with that leash that she promised, or she didn't come back out here with that spay-neuter voucher that they said they'd follow up on. When we offer things, we need to make sure we're garnering or creating a system in which we're reaching back out to those people. Effective pauses are really important in doing this work, especially if you're over the phone. So if you're dealing with someone over the phone and they're talking and you're not able to get a word in otherwise, stop talking for a second. They're going to ask if you're still there, and then you can continue the conversation from there. And that follow-up we were talking about. Follow-up is vital. Did you promise to come back out there? It shows you were engaged and you actually wanted to assist in resolving the issue from the start. And it cannot be resolved at the moment. Set a reasonable time frame. You know, I'll come back out here next week. Let me see if I can find you that doghouse. So when we're having these interactions, make sure your basic coaching plays. Start with introducing yourself. Ask for their name so you can be personable in your interactions. Label the emotion that they're expressing and start paraphrasing to garner that understanding. So what does this look like for us? You know, some actual case scenarios of this work. I'm going to be very intentional and label that I'm only going to use case scenarios in which the individual or community member or client is white. I am doing that with intentionality as a white woman, understanding the intersectionality of who I am, and that I actually don't need to use community members outside of my own race to prove the point of this active listening and the way that this can garner support and be a way that you interact with the community in an equitable and compassionate way. So my first case scenario is of animal hoarding case. This is me in the photo. On this day, the community member in question was suffering mental health crisis. Here in Arlington County, we address these situations with a multiple disciplinary approach. A social worker from Adult Protective Services is always present, or CPS if there's a minor involved. We have a crisis intervention team trained police officer present on scene at all times. We have all of the animal welfare folks, of course, and we also have code enforcement and the fire marshals in order to ensure the security of the person and offer services as it relates to repairing the home and structure. So on this specific day, when we had done this work, we just happened to pull a weird straw in that everybody who wasn't me was a male. And in some situations that would not be an issue, but I was inside on this warrant because there were many, many dozens of animals present, and I heard a disruption outside. So I went outside to see what was going on, and the scenario was falling apart. And I couldn't understand why, because the police officer in this case is one of the biggest teddy bears of a person you will ever meet in the world. And he's done this with me on many, many cases. But I'm like, something's just off. So I pulled this community member to the side, and in interacting with her, I started to understand better how the fact that all of them happening to be male that day was of a large concern to her. So I immediately adjusted, right? I took myself out of incident command on the warrant, and I started providing services. I got down to her level so that her and I could whisper to each other so that she could feel more comfortable in that moment, right? Because now we're talking about stuff that's really personable, and she's sharing a lot of information with me that she doesn't want known to all these other people that are standing around and coming in and out of her home. We're going to adjust to these situations as needed to make sure that we're meeting the community's needs. This person deeply cared about every single animal that was on this property. She ended up being my greatest ally in understanding the needs of these pets later on and willingly surrendering them to us. After her and I garnered rapport on this situation, I'm actually going to visit her in about a week's time. We've stayed in touch since. I drop off Christmas presents. It's just a relationship that comes from doing this work with all of your heart, right? So many people do this work and they say, I don't know how you do this work for so long. I would just hate people. And I'm like, no. If it wasn't for love, you couldn't do this work. You have to be grounded in that foundation of how we care for people. We animal welfare professionals should always be some of the most compassionate people on these calls, because we show up to this work with those big hearts, right? That's what keeps us all in it. A stray reclaim. So we had a cat come down to the shelter, was dropped off, disoriented, and very minorly injured. I say minorly because thankfully we were able to quickly sort it out for this pet. This pet was here for almost 8 days when an individual came down. So here in the state of Virginia, 5 days is the stray hold without an ID, and this pet unfortunately had no identification or collar. So this pet was in the on view area of cats. The owner came down to look for her pet, saw that he was in the adoptions room, got notably upset, as most of us could reasonably understand, and came over to the adoptions desk fuming. How dare you put my cat up for adoption? So when I come into the scene, because staff came and retrieved me because she was very, very upset, and I specialize in crisis intervention. And I was talking with her and I said, I can see you are so deeply upset today. I am so grateful that you came down here to reclaim him. We are so thankful that we were able to find you and get you and your family back together. Can you tell me what is so upsetting you? Was it seeing him up for adoption? And she said, no, it was the front desk staff member asking me, how come I didn't realize my cat was missing for 7 days? And I was like, well, I just want you to know that we really value that you came down here today. We are so deeply saddened by the fact that something we said hurt your feelings. It was absolutely not intentional, but I can understand how it came across that way. And we want to get this remedied for you right away. So let me see if I can quickly process the two of you out and get your family going. Can I have some basic information about your pet? After I offered this, like, I understand that you love him so much. She suddenly started crying and she said that her son was dying of cancer. So her and her husband have been doing the ships in the night with each other to and from Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C., making sure that someone was always by that little one's bedside. And so in doing that, neither one of them realized that the other one wasn't refreshing the cat's bowl. And so he hadn't come home to eat. When the child had gotten sick, the cat was having behavioral issues as a result of the child not being in the home. So they let the cat be inside, outside. This child had a history of leukemia and unfortunately had relapsed and was not doing well. When she said the words, my child is dying of cancer, she lost it in our lobby, as we could only imagine as parents and community members. This had nothing to do with the love of this cat. This had everything to do with the fact that this family was suffering. And unfortunately, this cat jerk went on some tangent to some other neighborhood, got himself lost under the fence, everything that happens. It was absolutely not intentional on the cat's part. But when I went and got the cat, I was like, what's wrong with you? Your family needs you. Get in this carrier. These kinds of situations happen. And so why do we go into the situation thinking that people don't come down to reclaim their pet because they're ill-intended, right? That's the story, the moral of this story. they were absolutely overjoyed to have him, and he was desperately missed. And of course, they remedied the situation for how they were monitoring him now that they knew he needed a little bit more attention. I was responding field officer for an animal cruelty case last year in which a community member suffered a mental health crisis, unfortunately, and 2 dogs ended up getting thrown from balconies here in Arlington County. I think one of the reasons that I included this case scenario is that I'm sure you could drop down into the chat and guess what the #1 comments on these national news stories was. You want to drop down into the chat, what do you think were the comments that came up on this national news story? One of the #1 comments across the country on this news story when it broke nationally was he should have thrown himself off the balcony, or why didn't he jump? So as a responding officer, I can absolutely tell you that this person loved these pets. This had nothing to do with a lack or ill intention. This person had no history relating to the specific mental health disorder. This was the first time this person experienced this disorder. And as a result of not being cognizant of what this person was doing, he ended up making some really life-changing decisions. I absolutely, with my whole heart, know that this person loved these pets, loved them desperately. And as a result, once finding stability mentally, has suffered with the actions that he has taken and has subsequently been a threat to himself. So when we see these stories, I think in the animal welfare community, rather than overly publicizing these types of situations or jumping in there to say, how could he, people are horrible, understanding that you will never know the depth, breadth, and width of all of these cases that we see, and that it's not ill intention at the bottom of these cases, that sometimes really sad things can happen, and it doesn't go back on people not loving or wanting to maliciously injure animals. This is a case I just dropped in here. This was just a few weeks ago here at our own front door. And I hope this wraps it up in, like, how do we present things as animal welfare professionals? How do we garner support for the amazing work that we do, while also being mindful of how we're encouraging the community to talk about others? So these kittens were left in this adorable little bag at our door. Some animal welfare organizations might have rushed to, these animals abandoned, left disturbingly at our door. How dare you? And I want to give credit to Chelsea Jones, our public, I call her our PIO, our public media messaging specialist here at the Animal Welfare League of Arlington. This is the kind of language she always uses when this stuff happens. To whomever dropped these kittens off, we want you to know that they are safe and happy. Thank you for bringing them to AWLA where you knew they would be cared for. We would love to know a little bit more about them and their history. So please feel free to contact us anytime. You will not be judged. You're not in trouble. You'll be helping us, and maybe we can assist you as well. And so it talks about creating a picture. We could have posted like, animal control officer saves kittens abandoned at the door of the shelter in the middle of the night. This media post had over 620 likes within the first week, not a single angry face, right? It's about creating a narrative with our community that people who seek out our help are good people. People who come down to surrender their animals mean well for their animals because they are entrusting us to find loving homes for them. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'll turn it back over to the moderators for questions.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. That was incredible. Yes, so many great comments in the chat that every human needs to see this presentation ever. This was so helpful. I do have a couple questions for you. So Alexis from Animal Rescue League of Berks County asked, are there any tips to help staff who deal with highly emotional situations with the public on a regular basis to help them stay in this more positive mindset in the tough moments day after day? Is there maybe a visual cue with a poster or something nearby? What do you recommend?
So I have what I call marshmallow moments. And it all relates back to this very young child here in Arlington County who gave me a marshmallow, a very dirty lint-covered marshmallow from her pocket. But I was having a very, very hard day, and I had taken some time to offer some resources to this family. And when I was leaving, this young girl came out to me and she rushed up to me and she offered me this marshmallow from her pocket. And she had obviously been coveting this, right? Like she was saving this marshmallow for a good time. And and offering it to me really, really meant a lot. And I know it sounds so silly, but you had to be there. It was a moment. Her and I had an absolute moment. We have to collect up these marshmallow moments because there are going to be times in this work that we experience extreme distress, right? I have seen, you have seen, we have experienced, we have been embedded in the trauma of others over and over again. And so I like to keep those moments. I like to keep them present around me. I like to keep pictures of it. I regularly will bring up that picture of the marshmallow sitting on my dashboard and sit in that moment and go back to that feeling of being gifted that marshmallow. So find your own marshmallow moments and hang on to them because the community needs you to reset. And also seek help. I get counseling. I regularly engage in employee assistance services. I like talking through this situation with somebody non-related to my family or my workplace. I find that to be very healing. So thank you.
It's incredible. Thank you so much. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask Jennifer. We've got a couple more minutes for Q&A.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Ellen over at the Humane Society of North Texas down in Fort Worth. We have a cruelty director who currently we have 5 MOUs with counties out here. So we work with government agencies, sheriff's departments, but we've had conversations that here's my question. Is there any validity, support in allowing or working with a hoarder to keep one of their animals at home with them, or to remove all, which is what we currently do? Our director has said he has heard of cases where, 40 are removed, but the one older dog that the families had for years, asking to keep it. And I don't know, between a law, ethics, setting the problem in order. I certainly understand that hoarding is just a symptom of something else going on, and that this is not going to correct it. We have to help people move through their process, but my job is to care for the animals while I have government agencies hopefully have funding to work with a hoarder that has some other issues that they need to work on. So I'm just looking for anybody in the group who might have done this, or to weigh in on the do's, the don'ts, the pros and the cons. Thank you.
If you don't mind if I start, Ellen, if anybody else has some feedback. So in my professional career, I've been in animal control for over a decade. 100% of animal hoarders that I interacted with in my first 8 years professionally recidivized, meaning that they were later found to have animals again. Miss Sammy, in the situation that I spoke about, and to honor some of the dignity in my interaction with her, I'm not going to go into too far of detail for some of the services we provided. This is why I mentioned it's multidisciplinary here in Arlington County. We also practice restorative justice practices relating to our animal welfare cases, which I know is very abnormal. And so I come at this from a very rare perspective, but Miss Sammy was permitted to keep a pet. She absolutely was. That pet was maintained here by the league and was returned to her, and a part of the relationship that we later established. And then unfortunately, when she got to a physical condition in which she needed to move to housing, she was able to relinquish that pet to us. I think it's important in honoring the fact that when we're dealing with individuals who have hoarding, it is a mental health illness. And so if we're coming at it from as animal welfare professionals, not bringing in mental health services, we're not doing the person justice. This individual had a lot of situations going on. We actually had to get her medical care. We had situations where she had inability or access to food. And so everybody is on those scenes. That's why I talk about APS, social workers, like everybody is there when we do these types of situations, so that we can kind of offer a broad range of perspectives. But we really feel very sternly about honoring the dignity of everybody. that comes into our contact, including the individuals who hoard.
Thank you.
Jennifer, we had another question. When thinking about that hoarding case, would there be any different actions you would take if the person was Latina or Black, or maybe dealing with some language barrier issues? Is there any additional people you bring in, and how do you kind of identify that?
Yeah, so I myself am Spanish speaking. I'm bilingual, as is my sergeant. When we're understanding of the fact that people in our interactions have different needs and intersectionalities, we try to assess those to the best of our ability prior to going on scene. But you can do all of the great work in the world, get there, and you're like, oh, someone's missing. And that's okay, right? It's just then getting that person and bringing them to the table. And so when we got there, there was a food security issue that we hadn't kind of pre-assessed for the person. And so we had to get services on board and get them there. And so it's also being mindful and just kind of naming it. When you get there, just be honest with the person and say, I think that we need more services for you, and we're very sorry they're not here right now, but we're going to go find them for you and we'll come back. And then following up in the appropriate way. But yes, we have to be mindful of the fact also as individuals, like I am in an extreme place of authority. I'm a white person and I wear a badge, right? So when we're talking about our intersectionalities of privilege, I've got a lot of them. And so, so sometimes that means that you're going to take a step back, especially if you're in a position of privilege, and allow other people to come to the table who more closely represent the client that you're serving. But know who those people are and create those relationships, because like any good PIO says, relationships are not created at 3 a.m, right? These are relationships that we have outside of this. And so we actually have, like, one of the things that we have here in Arlington now is that we have a Zoom link in which we can let a clinician on a video chat with a person while we field respond out somebody that better meets the client's needs. So making sure that you're bringing a lot of intentionality when you do this kind of work. And not harming people, because even as responders, even as animal welfare professionals, we cause harm, right? I sat in that moment with her and I said, I am so sorry how deeply wounded you must feel today for us being here and being in your home, right? You're gonna sit in that moment and own the pieces that, you know, it's not great, but you got to own the pieces that you're a part of.
That is incredible. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And the final questions I've been seeing in the chat is, can we clone you? Everyone wants a Jennifer in their city, because this is incredible, the amount of work you're doing and really just reaching the people. Just thank you so much for all the work that you do and for sharing with us today.
Thank you. My community invested in me. You know, I wasn't always this person, but I sat down with community members who told me what I was missing, you know, and who taught me the history of the community that I served and invested in me. So it's, you know, it takes a village, really.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. As a reminder, we are not going to be meeting next week. We will be observing Indigenous Peoples Day. So be on the lookout. We'll send, Maddie's Fund will send you some links and videos, some things to kind of help celebrate, recognize where you're at. And again, our recording will be shared later on Maddie's Pet Forum today. So keep an eye out for that. And I hope you all are safe and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.